How's it going, everyone? Hope you're all keeping well, and welcome to the finale of the RTA MX5 World Series. The championship was started 8 weeks ago in Okayama in Japan before crisscrossing across the Atlantic between the UK and the US, and now for round 8 of 8 we find ourselves down under in Australia at Mount Panorama Bathurst, one of the world's most iconic circuits, and one which will surely be a challenge in these very tricky cars. If you missed the previous race, round 7, which if all things went to plan should have came out a couple of days ago, that one at a very wet Brands Hatch, make sure you give that one a look before we get into this one. Looking at the championship standings then, heading into the final round, Ronan Doherty with a 58-point lead over Dylan McClemens. Those points don't include drop rounds, so taking those into account, Ronan sits on 460 points, Dylan on 417, so a 43-point gap there, which with 90 points on offer here this evening is pretty big gap for Dylan to try and overcome, and it seems pretty likely that Ronan will wrap this one up with a race or two to spare. Looking at the B Series standings then, Dave Collier and Emma Dempsey shown as level on points here, but taking again drop rounds into account, Dave has a 16-point gap over Emma, and once again for the B Series championship 16 points can be a pretty big gap, so the odds definitely in Dave's favour there to take home the B Series championship. Then looking at myself shown there in 7th place, but once again with drop rounds taken into account, I'm actually in 6th place with Ollie just ahead of me and then Ronan ahead of him, so Ross drops down behind myself after the drop rounds, and it is very close. The gap between myself in 6th and Ronan in 4th is just 17 points, so about the same gap as between Emma and Dave, so there is a chance that I could get a top 4 by the end of these 3 races, but I think I'll have to have some pretty good races for that to play out. And as I mentioned a couple of races ago, top 5 would be the aim, and I think that is very much doable, just 3 points separating myself and Ollie for that top 5 finish. But can't really worry about that too much, just have to keep our head down and get as good a results as possible, and then the standings will take care of themselves. And at this track really anything could happen here tonight, going from one of the shortest laps of the calendar to one of the longest here in Mount Panorama, an iconic circuit as I've mentioned already, and turns out a very fun one to drive in these Mazda MX-5s, and one that I seem to actually have a pretty good handle on off the bat. Obviously still about the same time off the fast guys, but surprisingly felt very comfortable just throughout all these tricky corners, going over, across and back down the mountain, and really just feeling confident in the car, and your control of the car around here is 90% of having good races, so hopefully that can maintain itself throughout qualifying, which we are in now, and the 3 races, and we can get some good results. But now, having mentioned qualifying, suppose we should jump into this session. Hasn't been the best so far, had a crash on the final corner, had to reset to the pits, and that does mean that I'm out of sync with everybody else, so not going to have a tow, which can be worth a lot of time around here. But starting what was my fastest lap in this session now, luckily that car that had a spin on the exit on the fairly short pitch straight reset to the pits before it interfered with us. Through turn 1 then, Hell's Corner, 2nd gear, important to get on the power as early as you can, and the exit is the most important of everything there as it sets up the run down the mountain straight into turn 2 of Quali. A very fun corner, one of my favourite on the track actually. throwing it in down to second gear, getting on the power as early as you can, using all the track on the exit. And now we head into the fun part of the track. Through the cutting of turn 3 and turn 4, again braking down to first gear on the power before you're even halfway around the corner, as you want the momentum to carry you up the hill. Flat out all the way then through turn 6 and then through turn 7, as we head across the top of the mountain now, through Frog Hollow and Reed Park, into turn 9 coming up, then getting as close to the wall, through this left-hander here, through McPhillamy Park, and now we head into the iconic Skyline corner, and the S's heading downhill. The car wants to break away from you as you brake and downshift and try and turn. Through the compression then again on the power before you're even through the corner, and now we head into the dipper, turn 18 here, braking into this hairpin. Again, you want to focus on getting a good exit, because we head now through the kink onto the longest flat out section of the track, down along the Conrod Straight, staying in fourth gear until we cross this crest that we're coming up to. As we get to the top, then into fifth. Upshifting before there will make the car bog down a bit more than you would like, and now we head into the chase, flat out through the kink and spotting the 100-meter board, braking just at that or just before, into the chicane, down to second gear, abusing those curves, using as much track as you can, as now we are near the end of the lap, and this is where you don't want to throw it away, into the 20 turn and final corner of Murray's. My weakest corner on the track, I would say, just avoiding that curb on the inside, using the track on the exit, and we cross the line to set a 2-minute 32.1, puts us in P8, and that is a lap around Mount Panorama in an MX5. After that then I did go for another lap, and about 3/10 up heading into the chase, but didn't take it very well. Lost about a 10 to 10th and a half there, taking it a bit conservative towards the end of the lap. So I decided to send it a bit too hard then into Murray's corner, and on the exit just drifting off, getting an off track and invalidating the lap. Unfortunately that means that we do not improve. In the end though, even if I had improved by those 3/10, it would not have improved the position from P9 on the grid. A long way off Sean McGoldrick on pole position, ahead of Ronan Doherty and Dar Halley in third place, 2.1 seconds off them, and it's even a big gap to Peter McCann just ahead, 7/10 to him. But then from myself down, it's pretty close between a good couple of us. So with the slipstream around here, and with what we're expecting in terms of carnage, to put it bluntly, I think that there could still be a chance of some good results, and even just holding a position in P9 ahead of a lot of my championship rivals in the B Series. A couple of 9th place finishes, maybe a P8 to get reverse grid in race 3. I wouldn't be disappointed with that. So with that said, let's head into the final race 1 of the season. So as we're lined up ready to go here in Bathurst, the red lights come on and the red lights go out, the green ones come on, and the foot goes to the floor. A bit of a stranger grid sequence here at Bathurst compared to the other tracks on the calendar. Maybe it's just me, but they seem to be spaced further apart. So heading into turn 1, there's not really too much chaos, because we're all kind of spread out for the most part, able to slot into position and remain clean for now. Up ahead, Campto and Peter going side by side. Peter just getting ahead with his better exit out of the first turn. And now we head into Quali for the first time. Braking earlier than we would have in qualifying, just because of the concertina effect. Don't want to run into the back of anyone this early in the race at least. And now into the cutting for the first time before we start to head up the mountain. Up ahead, the white car that Sean McClemens was sent spinning around. so we managed to get a move on him, and now we're side by side with Brandon McCotton, who seemed to not have a great qualifying session. Heading up the mountain, he managed to get that move around the outside. I had to back out of that, so we don't have great momentum, and now Dermot Toomey is having a look around the outside going across the top of the mountain. But if you look in the mirror here, he just ran a bit wide and ended up clipping the wall, and that is pretty much his first race over here in Bathurst as we head through Skyline, now down through the S's for the first time, taking it nice and easy. Just don't want to throw it away this early, but pretty decent start so far. We've gained one position and we've lost one, so I think we're still in P9, and looking at now, we're already a good bit behind Brandon and the cars ahead, so the focus now turns to Ross behind. Hopefully we can keep him there and secure this 9th place finish. We skip ahead then all the way to the end of the second to last lap, about to start the last lap, and through the final corner there has been a bit of an accident there. Robbie Callahan in the wall, so we move up into P8. And that was pretty much it for my race then, and not very exciting one to look at from the outside, but in the car was a very entertaining one. Ross keeping me honest over the entire 4 laps. There's a couple of points where coming across the mountain and back down I'd get the gap to 1.2 or 1.3 seconds, but the tow along the Conrad Straight is so strong that he managed to always pull it back within a couple of tenths. As heading down to the final corner, getting a bit distracted there, looking at something going off the track, almost binned it at the very end, but we come across the line to finish in P8 as there's a big crash up ahead after the flag.
That's the end of the session.
Good job.
So yeah, P8 it was then, up 1 place from where I started and gaining a good amount of points on Ollie and Ronan, who finished down in 13th and 17th respectively, so looking good for gaining a couple of positions in the B Championship. Up at the front then, Ronan Doherty takes the win ahead of Dylan McClemens, and with that Ronan did secure the championship, so congratulations to Ronan on that one. He was saying in the interviews on Gantry TV that he's been waiting to get a tin top championship, so it's nice to see him get that and round off a very good year for him. Obviously this is more important to him than winning the Leinster Trophy, but yeah, then Campto finishing in 3rd place, very close up at the front, the top 7 ahead of me, separated by less than a second across the line, so very close up at the front. It's close down around myself as well, myself and Ross pretty even on pace, and then Sean McClemens just behind us in 10th, recovering from that spin on the first lap, so he'll be somebody to look out for coming back through the field in this second race. So with that said, let's head into race 2. Starting on the opposite side of the grid this time then, in 8th position. Hopefully we can hold on to this position, and it will mean that we start from pole position in the final race of the season, which would be lovely to say the least. But once again, a pretty tame start here heading into turn 1. Everybody line astern and everybody trying to just focus on getting a good exit and maybe having a run down the mountain straight into turn 2 and getting a couple of moves done before we head back up the mountain. Again, with cold tyres now, everybody probably a bit used to having the grip of the warmer tyres at the end of the last race, so could be a couple of mistakes made. Hopefully for me it's not myself and it's a couple of cars ahead and we get a few places. Up ahead, side by side between, I think it's Dara Halley and Brandon McCohan, and I think everybody managed to survive that pretty well. Nobody being sent spinning this time like Sean was in the first race. Sean now right behind me, so definitely not someone you want to be seeing in your mirrors. Very fast driver, as are all of the top lads in this. But we're managing to keep pace pretty well so far on this opening lap in the slipstream of Peter McCann, as up ahead Sean McGoldrick very close to the wall there, and Peter almost side by side with Sean. They're now side by side pretty much heading into Skyline, but very smart drivers know that you can't really go side by side through the S's, and everybody just wants to survive and not end up tumbling down the mountain in a raging fireball. Heading into the dipper then, wanting to try and get a good exit, which we managed to do, and yeah, pretty happy with that exit, well within the slipstream of Peter, and it's going to pretty much drag us along then all the way down the Conrad Straight. And then when we finally hit the brakes into the dipper, we don't get the greatest run there through the chicane, hitting the curb a bit too hard, but Sean McGoldrick gets an even worse run, and Peter is piling all the pressure, he's staying behind. I didn't really want to go for a move down into the final corner, so I decided to stay behind, but we just hit the curb at the wrong angle and get sent for a spin, and now I'm broadside on the apex, just hoping that we don't get collected by anybody, which luckily we don't. I think somebody might have ended up hitting the wall there, just avoiding me, so, but looks like everybody's going pretty well, and very disappointed with that. We were in such a good position there to get a really good result and just thrown it away. In hindsight, should have just sent it down the inside of Peter and probably would have ended up better off. Just trying to play it safe ended up working against me. It didn't take long to gain back another position though into turn 2 on that very same lap. Paul Sheehan going a little bit wide, and we managed to sneak down the inside. And then later on that lap, just on the exit of the dipper, Ronan Duffy, after going for a spin, luckily we don't run into the side of him there, but that could be very big for our chances of moving up into B Series standings. Ronan, one of the drivers that is ahead of us, so nice to get that position and move up into P16. A few laps later then find ourselves up in P10, soon to become P9 with Sean McGoldrick in the wall there. I don't know what's after happening, but there's a lot of drivers after either coming into the pits or have to tow to the pits, so yeah, don't really know what to say there. I've just been focused on trying to chase down Dermot and David up ahead, and just been getting all these positions from other people's issues and incidents, so not going to complain there, and hopefully for myself there'll be a few more before the end of this race. But unfortunately there wasn't, and I wasn't able to catch up on Dermot or any of the cars up ahead, and unfortunately just going to miss out on that all important 8th place to get reverse grid pole. But really thinking about it, do I really want to be starting at the front of this pack with all these fast drivers trying to get past going across the mountain? Sounds like a recipe for disaster to me, so maybe finishing here in P9 and starting there for the final race of the season isn't the worst thing in the world, and we'll come across the line to solidify that top 10 finish. So P9 it was then. Unfortunate to lose one position from where I started, but after having the spin at the end of the first lap, recovering back up to 9th place is a very good result, and very happy with that. Up at the front, Dylan McClemens taking the win ahead of Campto and Dara Halley. Our champion Ronan Doherty finishing down in 13th place and a lap behind, maybe taking a few more risks now that the championship was all sewn up. And just taking a look at the likes of Dermot Toomey and Robbie Callahan up 11 and 12 places respectively. Dermot up 12 to get that reverse grid pole position, so very good race from Dermot, good recovery after that collision with the wall, trying to get a pass on me in race 1. But it's a nice position for us for the final race of the season. Let's see if we can make it a good one. So for the final time here in Bathurst, for the final time in the MX5 car for this season of RTA, we put foot to the floor whilst the lights go green and we head barreling into turn 1. Again, wasn't the greatest start by me, but not coming under any pressure from Sean McGoldrick behind, as we are all single file through the first corner and out onto the mountain straight. I'm a bit further behind the cars in front that I would ideally like to be, and that means that Sean is getting a really good slipstream on myself. You can see I defend slightly to the inside, just want to hold this position for as long as I can really. braking nice and late into turn 2, but Sean carries the speed around the outside. We're side by side then heading up into the cutting, and he is slightly ahead, so just going to back out of that one, make sure he gets the position and is ahead heading into the cutting. Peter trying to have a look around the outside there, but I get a better exit and we hold on to that position. Single file now through here for the time being. Everybody seems to have got a good run, and we're all playing nicely. Nobody shoving each other into the barriers, which is one of the best things about RTA. Everybody is very fair and very clean racers. Nobody wants to race like that because nobody wants to be raced like that. And yeah, it all works out nicely then. As we head down through the S's, Sean made a little bit of contact with the wall, I think, and I kind of followed him in there, hitting my front right corner off the inside barrier. But I think I'm going to check with the engineer as we head onto the Conrad Straight. Luckily, I didn't get any damage from that somehow.
No damage, car looks clean.
As you can hear there, I really don't know how I managed to avoid getting some kind of wheel damage. It felt like a pretty hefty hit, and I've definitely got damage from lighter taps than that. But maybe it's just the racing gods playing nicely for the final race of the season. Heading down to the chase now, I decided to give Sean a bit of a bump draft there because I didn't really have anything else to do. But I ended up having to lift off then and coming under all sorts of pressure. Ronan Doherty diving it down the inside, as does Brandon McCotton. Peter McCann trying to have a look around the outside. Now Jordan Kelly is going to have a look around the outside heading into the final corner. Jordan racing on either controller or keyboard and mouse, I'm not sure which, and he's still faster than me, which is a little bit depressing, but at least I'm not the only one he's faster than. Jordan is it just seems quick the whole time, even if he's not using a wheel and pedals. But it was a pretty good opening lap there. All kind of went downhill in the final few corners. Just getting checked up through the chase allowed all those lads to attack me then into the chicane, but we're still facing the right direction and the cars ahead are still well within our sight, so hopefully we can try and get a few passes done. And it didn't take too long to get one of those moves done. Heading down the hill, Jordan just getting it a bit wrong, probably not having the same control on a controller, and just going for a spin there into the wall, so we move up another place and still well within the slipstream range of Peter ahead, who's within the slipstream of David, who's within the slipstream of Brandon, and so on and so on. It's just a pretty big long slipstream train from, I think it's all the way from first down to myself in now 12th, so all very close here in race 3 for the first 2 laps. As I move up another 2 places, starting the 3rd lap, David Prunty and I think it was Dara Halley having a coming together on the exit of the final corner, and it's all starting to spread out now after I just mentioned how close it is. Going to be going 3 wide along the mountain straight. Ross Wheatley, Brandon McCotton and Peter McCann. I'm behind Brandon and I'm deciding to give him the bump draft because I want to push him ahead and then use his draft to try and get ahead of Ross, and I want to have the inside line heading into turn 3. Ross backs out of it pretty early and then I back out of it just a bit later, and that allows Peter to get past as well. I knew I wasn't going to get Brandon there, and I was thinking I might have been able to get ahead of Peter, but my main aim there was to stay ahead of Ross because he is one of the drivers I'm fighting in the B Championship, so he is kind of my priority here, beating him. I was able to stay with Peter and Brandon then for about the last 2 laps. Not really that I had the pace to catch up or stay with them, more so that they made a few little mistakes and were fighting between themselves, which made me be able to stay within the slipstream range. But now they have managed to get past Dermot Toomey as I have a big moment out of the final corner. Thankfully don't end up in the pit wall, but yeah, we've managed to stay with the 2 lads and they have dragged me up to Dirbit now, who has been very quick this season, but He seems to not have the same pace this evening, or at least in this race. He went from 20th to 8th in the last race, so he definitely still has some pace, but I feel like I'm closer on pace with him around here than I have been the rest of the season, and now my focus is on trying to pass him. Now that we have dropped Ross Wheatley, I think he might have had some kind of incident. I can't remember really, to be honest, but don't really have to be looking behind now and can focus on Dermot ahead and getting up into another 8th place finish tonight. But we cut ahead to later on the same lap, and coming down the mountain, Dylan McClemens is after having a crash there, so now we're up into that 8th place, and now we're going to try and fight for P7, which would be probably, I think, my best, if not one of my best results this season. A few laps later again then, coming back down the mountain, another car off in the barrier, and that is Nicky Meredith. It says Nicky, but it is actually Ollie, who, again, another driver ahead of us in the B Series Championship, who was already a lap down, but now his race is pretty much over, and it's looking pretty good so far to get up into that top 5, maybe even a top 4 if all things are after shaking out well in my favour. We skip ahead along to the start of the next lap, and I've been right behind Dermot for the last couple of corners, but it's along deep straights, the mountain straight we're on now, where it gets really important. Well within the slipstream, he is getting a tow from Peter and Brandon up ahead, who we still managed to stay with those two fighting, I think, just slowing each other down. Go down the inside of turn 2, but Dermot is able to carry the momentum around the outside and hold on to that position. So now that we're heading into the cutting and heading up the mountain, can't really make a move at the moment and just have to bide our time to try and stay close out of the cutting and get a good run down the Conrad Straight. But unfortunately all those plans are going to fall apart as we head across the mountain. Just maybe a bit of a lapse of concentration. I just don't get the line perfect, which you really need to do around here, and I understeer off into the barrier, and the car is in bits and we have to get a tow back to the pits. I did think that was it for my race then and my season, but after getting towed back, getting the fast repair, I saw that, as you can see here coming out of the pits, Ronan Duffy is just ahead of us after he had a couple of incidents as well, or an incident, and went, I think we're a lap down now, and we come out within a second of Ronan, so decided that was worth coming out fighting for 11th place, because I don't want to really end my season in the pits. So this is the final lap now, final lap of the season, and we're going to try and hunt down Ronan. At this point I wasn't sure what the state of the championship was for the B Series. I did think that I needed to get past Ronan to get my top 5, so I was very focused on getting this move done. And just going to let you look at this now as I talk about this season and a bit about next season. So I suppose as a whole, compared to the Indy cars, definitely wasn't as enjoyable for me, just because I didn't have the same pace and the same consistency or the same confidence as I did in the IR18. Last season I felt going into every race that I could fight for a top 8, maybe a top 5 if things went my way, but this season anytime I could maybe get a top 10 was going to be a good result. So in a way, glad to see the back of these cars, but again, I've definitely got more comfortable as the season goes on. They're still very fun to drive, and yeah, overall, still an enjoyable season. But I am looking forward to the next one, which is in the Formula V's RTA, partnering with Formula V Ireland for a Formula V championship. So looking forward to that one, and of course I will be returning with more videos. But back to this now, heading into the final few corners of the season. Again, good run on Ronan through the chase, heading into the chicane, braking zone. He just outbrakes me. He turns in very early, which it was very, I don't know, it was It was a bit risky because it could have very easily ended up in a crash there. I was thinking about going down the inside, but I decided to try and get a switch back and get a good exit, but we just clipped the curb too much. We do get a better run than Ronan, but the line comes up too quick, and we finish the final race of the MX5 season in 11th place. So it was actually 12th place. My overlays just getting a, well, I just don't think they updated before I ended that clip, but 12th place just behind Ronan, a lap down on Campto, who took the win by just under 2 tenths over Sean McGoldrick. Rob Callahan in 3rd place. If you look there in P5, Dermot Toomey, and I really feel that without hitting the wall there, I could have got past Dermot. So in another universe, I finished this race in P5, which would have really put a sweet taste at the end of this season. But even just this round in general, it's definitely my strongest round of the season, which is very strange to say considering it's at Bathurst. But a P8, a P9 and a P12 are definitely not bad results looking back on the season. And what that means for the championship standings then is Ronan Doherty is the champion ahead of Dylan McClemens. They were the only two that could have won the championship heading into this one. And then Conor Melia in 3rd place. And for myself, jumping up into the top 20, I think it's the first time this season I've been in the top 20. So nice way to round off the season. And then heading over to the B Series Championship, the important one. Dave Collier taking that one by 28 points over Emma Dempsey. Phil Upson rounding out the top 3, and I didn't even think it was going to be really possible heading into this one, but somehow I've managed to get up into 4th place, so very happy with that. Obviously missed 2 rounds this season. One of them would have counted as my drop round. In the other one, could I have got 19 points to get ahead of Phil? Probably, but it is what it is. Had other things on, and racing isn't the number one priority in my life, unfortunately. As much as it probably would love it to be, there are other things that come first. And all in all, good races to round out the season, and very happy to get top 4 in the B Series Championship. But that is it for this season of RTA. And before I go, just want to say thanks if any of the admins or those who are involved with running and setting up RTA for, again, setting up a great season. To Gantry TV, Evan, Kevin and Ronan for the great streams throughout the season and the past seasons, and the streams will be missed next season in the Formula V's. And thank you for this very lovely award which I was given in the award ceremony after the final race for Best YouTuber. I don't think there was any competition for this award, but still nice to get the recognition for it. Fortunately, I wasn't able to stay in the Discord after the race to accept it at the time, but it is nice to know that the lads, any of you that are watching, that you do enjoy the videos. And of course, if you have any suggestions of anything I could do to make these better, don't be afraid to leave a comment or shoot me a message on Discord. I am always open to suggestions on how to improve. But that is it for this one then. Thank you very much for watching. Until the next one, see you then.